Okay, this is vlog day 7. That is a week of vlogs that we could tune in one a day to. Let's get into it. All right, in this video, we're going to be talking about the very first page and first chapter of your story. Now, think through when you're scrolling on Netflix, how often do you give a cover a chance? Me, I kind of just hold the button to the right and let them flip through. The reality is this is what it can be like when people are exploring books, especially if they're looking at the spines and the covers as they're going through. It's easy just to keep flipping through until you see one that stands out to you. I do have a video on what makes a book cover stand out, but we're going to get to what is more, if we're using Netflix as the analogy, you've got them to stop and read the description. We could argue that that's the back of the book or the inside flap of the book, but in some ways, that opening chapter, those first few words, that first paragraph, that first page, are all representative of that descriptor. You have a chance to either hook or lose me in that moment. So how do we do that well? How do we capture someone's attention in a way that they say, I'm going to take this one home with me. I'm going to read this during my free time. This is going to be something that I want to appreciate and enjoy inside its respective genre. Definitely write the book that is right for your audience, not for everyone. That's for sure. Do that in your first chapter as well. If this is a book full of cursing, curse in that first chapter. If this is a book full of sunshine and daisies, throw in some daisies. Make it clear who your audience is. That's okay. I think that's a good thing. But how do we capture the attention of the right people? To talk about this, I'm going to utilize the 3 basic steps of a story as described by Brandon Sanderson in his writing lectures at BYU. And he says that a story, and I agree with him about this, is made up of 3 principal parts. 3 P's: promise, progress, and payoff. Now that's important because what that means is the beginning of our book is about the promises we're making to our reader. To utilize The Hobbit, for example, let's think about that opening promise. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Right? Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole. Was it oozing with worms? This was a hobbit hole, and that meant all of the comforts of home. I don't know if I'm quoting that or paraphrasing it. I've read it so many times. I'm going to go with that's a paraphrase. It'd be sick if it's not. But guys, the book opens up with a very clear statement about where we're at. This is a hobbit who's enjoyed all of the luxuries of life. And this is who we're following, and that's very much true. So there's the promise of following a hobbit who's enjoyed the comfort of life. There's a promise of it being a fantasy story because, of course, hobbits don't exist in our realm. And as we open up and all these dwarves start pouring into his house, or Gandalf shows up and he kind of promises that there will be an adventure. There's this mysterious, powerful wizard who shows up at this person's home. Promises are being made to us as readers. Now to contrast that, have you ever sat down to watch a movie or to read a book and you thought, for example, it was going to be an action story based off of maybe the trailer or the first 15 minutes of the movie? And then as things progress, you realize, oh, wait a minute, this is a romance, or this is a drama, or this is a coming-of-age story. This is not the story that I was promised. The progress of the story, what we're working towards in terms of our payoff at the end, is not what I thought we were going to be getting at the beginning. And maybe the romance is actually a great story, but it's just not the story I thought it was going to be. So there's this huge disconnect, and a lot of times those movies are either just okay, or they even make it, or those books, or they even make it onto our do not finish list. We're just like, you know what, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm bailing out. They seem to lack direction, so I'm out of here. It's good to think through those things as we make our opening chapter. What do we want our readers to understand our story is about? If this is a horror story, tell me something horrific in the beginning. If this is a fantasy, make it clear that it's a fantasy. If this is a romance, give me strong inclinations that we're moving that way. Give me the promise. I would argue that the more promises you can give, the better. You don't want to overload your story. You don't want to make it so that you're not telling a story at all. But I mean, the more categories you can hit. So narratively, what kind of promises are you making? Okay, this is a story about a girl and a boy who fall in love. Great. What can you put in that opening chapter that makes that clear? This is a story that has this kind of tone. The writer is very upbeat and happy all of the time. Cool. Is that first chapter reflective of that? Or are we getting like a super depressed chapter 1, and that's what we're expecting throughout the rest of the book, and then the rest of the book is not going to imitate or mimic that. Is this a book about mysteries? Are you leaving me in wonder at the end of chapter 1? I think that's almost always a great idea, but I am biased. I love wondering what's around the corner. I like dark fantasy, so I love that notion of like, what kind of monster is out there and who's really pulling the strings? But I want to craft that expectation in chapter 1, especially for new readers who can't assume. Right? If you've got 5 books and you can kind of take a broad scheme of here's what faithful readers have read, then maybe chapter 1 is more like book 1. But I would argue you shouldn't live in that realm. You should continuously set the table for chapter 1. I think that's a great way to go. Of course, a good rule is also great to know when to break. I'll let you decide that. But guys, in your own writing, are you setting yourself up for success? What kind of promises have you made in that opening line, in that opening paragraph, in that opening page, and in that opening chapter? And does it mimic or does it forecast what you want to have happen with the rest of the book? This is so important because, again, the potential readers that you draw in are going to read chapter 1 first. So if you want to bring people into your horror story, don't write a romance for chapter 1. You will draw in romance readers. That's my first big piece of advice. My second piece of advice is to show, not tell. Don't feel like you have to tell. This is going to sound almost a little counter to the first point. Hopefully this will weigh them out together. Don't feel like you have to tell your whole story in chapter 1. Don't try to do that. Don't information overload. I believe it's, Chekhov's gun? Is that what it's called? Which is a law for storytelling, which states that you shouldn't say, don't tell me about the gun that's on the wall unless it's going to go off in the next chapter. Contribute to your story. The promises should make promises about what the progress is about as well. And if I, for my first chapter, only talk about tax returns, then the readers who go forward should hopefully expect something about tax returns. Otherwise, I shouldn't be speaking about them so dang much. So my advice to you is to pick what elements belong in that story that kind of give a little taste. Think of chapter 1 in a sense as like being your pilot episode. This is your chance to hook readers and to show them what you're all about. I'll tell you, for Demon and Witch, my book, chapter 1 contributes to the overall story, but more in an undercurrent kind of way. It fills out the world. It helps us understand the world a little better. It gives us promises for those things going forward. But the main character of chapter 1 is kind of an archetype of the actual main characters. I won't say more about that in case you decide to check it out. Don't want to spoil things for you. But yeah, the chapter 1, in my opinion, is a good slice of meat off of the actual animal. So that if you're curious in buying it, you know what you're going for. Does your chapter 1 do that? And if it doesn't, then my encouragement to you is it's time to level up. One final note. It can be super easy in wanting to set the stage in chapter 1 to text dump. To be like, oh, this is the city we're in, and this is what it looks like, and these are all of the things in it, and please don't do that. I do think it can happen. I do think it can happen well. I don't think it is done well 95% of the times that it is done. If you want to show us the city, give us your main character and have them walk through it for a reason, right? So that they're seeing things. If you want us to get that the city is impoverished, have your main character walk down that street and see the people starving and tell us what it's doing to the character in such a way that we're like, oh, she hates the impoverished situation that the city finds itself in. Maybe this is a story about her trying to fix that. So tell us the story. Don't get so caught up. It's not D&D. We don't need the lengthy paragraph of like, this is the city you're entering into now. What is the move? You're the one driving the story. So explore the city through the narrative. Just my advice. And I would say that not just for locations, but also for magic systems. If you want to do what like Brandon Sanderson does and put an Arx Arcanum in the back, a magic rule book in the back, I think that's cool. I think that adds to the art. I love those kinds of things. Do that. Let me consult it throughout. But then explain the magic in the context of the story. Use it in chapter 1 so that we have that kind of promise of like, oh, there's going to be magic in this book. this is the kind of magic it's gonna be. That's great. I'm all for that. But don't get caught into being a textbook when you want to be a storybook. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Let me know how your story is going progress-wise. How far are you in? And feel free to check out my other videos for resource. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.